Hi, my name's Jenny Leone, and I'm an alcoholic. So, my story starts a long, long time ago when I was just a little girl. And going back that far, it will give you a good idea as to why I became who I was, why I got mixed up in drugs and alcohol, and how I found my way into recovery. So, going back to a very young age, unfortunately, I was molested as a child. And so, that went on in my childhood. And from that moment on, I always wanted to numb my feelings. And, as a child, as a teenager, and even as an adult until I got into recovery, I didn't realize that when you numb the stuff that's hurting, you numb all the good stuff too. So I wasn't feeling properly from a very young age, and I didn't understand what love meant. I didn't understand relationships, and I really had a false sense of reality of what life was supposed to be. So from a very young age, I was, over sexualized. I was always trying to, be out there dating guys, being defiant, running around with the wrong people, trying to find my way, and struggling internally at the same time. So, kind of went through school normally per se until I got into high school, and then I ended up going to alternative schools and didn't have that normal high school experience. And I was raised in Canada. No, I don't think I said that. So it's a little different out there. And as a child, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a model. So I started doing that at a young age. I went to like acting school, theater classes, was getting little roles here and there as a teenager. And then I had an opportunity to come out to the States and do a TV show. And I was 19. And I was already in my addiction, not realizing really that I was in my addiction. But when I look back, I definitely was. And I would just make the most ridiculous, impulsive decisions that could ever imagine. Like, for example, here's a good one. I came out at 19. I didn't know anybody but my manager at the time. And I came out with a suitcase, $3,000, and the intent to marry an American for a green card. Can I say that? But that's what I did. So I came out here, 19 years old, moved up to Hollywood and married somebody in their 40s for a green card. And as you can imagine, like, we're still happily married, and that worked out. Yeah, right? No, that did not work out. And I ended up leaving that person within a very short period of time. And it ended up being a very toxic, unhealthy situation. I had to get a permanent restraining order against this person. And, I was in this like victim state of mind, and I carried that with me for a very, very long time. And I would not see my part in anything. I was always a victim. It was always all this other stuff. And I would always be like, God, like, why do these things keep happening to me? I have the worst luck. I keep meeting these awful guys. Like, what is going on? When is it going to turn around for me? Not realizing, because I had no sense of self or self-awareness whatsoever, that I was putting myself in bad situations, and I was being impulsive, and I wasn't pausing and like looking at things properly. And so from being over sexualized, from being in, toxic relationships, I would seek that out without realizing it. So I was often running up in Hollywood, and I started taking a lot of pills. When I was younger, I was like taking Xanax a little bit here and there. I was doing a lot of party drugs, smoking weed, stuff like that. But when I got out to the States, that's when I really started diving into a lot of prescription medication. So I was prescribed by a doctor. So I was prescribed Xanax because I had horrible anxiety, legit horrible anxiety, social anxiety. I mean, to the point where I couldn't stand in a line at the bank or in the grocery store. Like it was really, really bad. But it was made worse because I was just kept taking Xanax and it was just a Band-Aid. So I was taking Xanax, I was taking Adderall because I had ADHD, and I was taking pain pills. And so that was like my three things that I would take. And I would take one to come up, one to come down, and something in between. So I did that for a very long time while I was, pursuing a modeling and acting career. I landed some pretty good gigs. I got my SAG and AFTRA card and felt like, okay, maybe I'm on my way, but the drugs kept holding me back one way or another. And so I wanted to make money. That was my thing. I wanted nice things. I was very materialistic in my early 20s. And one day I got a call from a lady named Jenna Jameson, who ended up being a very good friend of mine for many years. And she said to me, hey, would you ever think about doing adult stuff, adult modeling, adult acting, things like that? And I thought, well, I hadn't really thought about it, but I'm open to hear what you have to offer. So I ended up flying out to see her, and I got contracted as the top girl contract star ever for the adult industry. And this was back in the day where people were watching like actual videos, and it wasn't all online yet, and it was a lot of magazine work. So at one point in time, I was on more magazine covers than any adult model. I think I have them, which is pretty funny. I'll go through them once in a while just to look and be like, wow, I can't believe that was me, And I think at one point I was on like 15 covers. So I was like Penthouse Pet in different countries and Playboy and all these different things. And I was an AKA, meaning I had another name I went by. And I'm sure you can imagine if you're on drugs and you go by another name, like, who are you? Like I had absolutely no sense of self. And I was just completely engulfed in this world that was not normal. But for the people that were in it, it was normal. And so it was like this really weird time in my life, like a good 10 years of just partying, traveling around the country, hanging out with all sorts of people. And it wasn't uncommon for people to be popping pills and doing God knows what. And people just doing God knows what, at all hours of the day and night. And that was my life. And I didn't realize how big of a problem I had with drugs and alcohol, especially drugs, until I tried to stop taking the pills. And when I tried to stop taking pills, I realized, oh my God, this is so bad. Like I can't stop. Like if I stop, I'm going to be in the hospital. I'm going to get sick. I would go into like the gnarliest withdrawal. Like I had to literally take something every 4 hours or else I would get sick. And so here I am, at this point, I own a house in Canada. I'm living in a big, beautiful house out here, driving around a fancy car, have every designer thing I could possibly imagine, wouldn't get out of bed unless I was making like some ridiculous amount of money. And I was literally dead on the inside, literally dead. And nobody knew. Nobody knew. I mean, maybe there was some whispers here and there because I got anorexic skinny. I lost my gallbladder. I would disappear for a few days at a time, and I'd be in the hospital. But whether people turned a blind eye or they just didn't know, I wasn't honest at all about what I was going through, and that kept me sick. What ended my career in that industry and, pushed me into eventually getting help was I got into a really bad situation. And I got into a lot of bad situations, as you can imagine, being in that lifestyle and around people that want one thing from you. There was a lot of horrible things that happened, but there was one thing that was the main event, you know, that really like pushed me into, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. And that was one of the executives at Playboy raped me, and I ended up suing Playboy for millions of dollars. And Gloria Allred was my attorney for a period of time. And I ended up walking away from that lawsuit because I was so sick in my addiction, and I was portrayed as this drug addict porn star, and this was this innocent man. And they just like ripped my life apart. And I just couldn't deal. And I thought, I'm going to die before this case is over if I keep trying to pursue this. So I ended up walking away from it. And that person got off scot-free. And I kind of just like was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And so after that, I still didn't get sober. I had my son, still didn't get sober. And you know, people try to say, oh, well, your children should get you sober or be able to keep you sober. And as horrible as it is to say, they can't. Like, you have to get sober because you want to get sober. And so I started trying to do all these things to like keep me out of modeling, to, you know, push me in the right direction. And so I was like, I'm going to start getting heavily tattooed. I'll get heavily tattooed and then I won't get hired anymore in any modeling. And so I started getting tattooed. I got my back piece, and that didn't work. I was still, you know, getting hired for things, not adult, but other things. And it just kept me in that lifestyle though. And I knew that if I was going to change my life, I would have to walk away from that life completely and start over as me, as Jenny Leone, and not this AKA that I'd been living for a very long time. And so that's what I did. You know, it came to the point where I was living with an ex, and I had a gun in one hand, and I had my life in the other hand. And I knew in that very moment that if I didn't pick my life, I was going to die. And so for the first time, I truly asked for help, and went to treatment, which was quite the experience. Talk about a humbling experience. You know, going into treatment for me, it was not some bougie place. I ended up, without realizing it, ended up at a place where I was on a bunk bed. I couldn't wear makeup. We had to make our own food, clean up after ourselves, like sick as a dog. But it was the best thing that could have happened to me because that's what I needed. You know, I stayed sick for so long because of my lifestyle and not being open and honest with people. And once I started being open and honest and got humble, things started to turn around. And so, you know, through this span of time, I had gotten married. And so I was going through a divorce in early recovery, which was tough, but I did it. Not to say I didn't, what I like to call emotionally relapse several times when I was newly sober, you know, trying to find my way and who I was, because I didn't know who I was. I was always this other person. I was always portraying somebody else in one way or another. So I had to dig deep, like, who do I want to become? And in those moments of like searching for myself and spiritually searching, I realized I know who I want to become. I want to become the best version of myself and be able to help others. If I can help one person not go through what I went through, or at least be able to walk next to somebody going through the same thing and make them feel like they're not alone, and make them understand that it's brave and courageous to ask for help, and make them feel that they can be a survivor and not a victim, that everything that had happened in my life would be worth it, that all of that negative stuff could turn positive. And I had this aha moment. And so I put myself back in school. I got certified in drug and alcohol studies. I became a case manager for a treatment center, became an intern there, making minimum wage. Like I wouldn't get out of bed unless I was making thousands of dollars to making minimum wage as an intern. And so like it was a rebirth. It was excruciating. It was so painful, but it's what I needed to do to get better. So I worked my way up the ladder. Was a case manager, then became a certified life coach, and then opened up a women's sober living house, and then started running a business development department at a treatment center, then getting my own podcast, and just, working my way up, and, really doing the work I needed to do internally, doing a lot of work with a therapist, turning that state of mind from a victim to a survivor. That for me was the turning point, to be able to go, okay, these things don't need to control me anymore. These people don't have power over me anymore. I'm strong and I'm brave and I'm beautiful in my own skin. And when I was able to become a survivor, I gained the self-confidence. And it took a very long time. I mean, I've been sober for almost 7 years, and it's not until probably the last 3 years where I've really come into myself and who I am, who I want to become, what I won't settle for, having good boundaries, it's so many things. And just taking the why not me approach to life. Like so many people will sit and go, oh, maybe this person, not me though, oh, well, it's so cool they have that, but not me though. And it's like, well, why not me? It can be you. It can be you in anything you want in life, whether it's to get into recovery, whether it's a career choice, whatever it is, you can do it. And as long as you can show up for yourself every single day and be consistent and do your best, everything will work out. And I know that because that's what happened in my life. And these miracles started unfolding. And the right people started aligning in my life. And good things started to happen. And more good things started to happen. And it was just like one God shot, I like to call it, after another, of the universe just going like, okay, you're ready for this now. And so here we are, fast forward, here I am sitting here telling you guys my story as I embark on this Recover Out Loud movement to show the world that no matter who you are, where you're at, what stage of your life, where you came from, where you think you're going, recovery can fit into all of that. And it can be fun, and it can be beautiful, and you can stay connected, and you can have a community of people around you that can relate, that can love you unconditionally, and they won't judge you. And so for me, I recover out loud, and I want to be that person for other people.